We're at the next episode of the No Dam's Given podcast.
Yes, we are.
And today we have Just Liv. Hey, Liv.
Hello. Hi. Thanks, Heidi.
Perfect. And Mr. Eric Belisco.
Yes, I'm back.
Yeah. And so the sponsor that I would like to talk about this evening, besides Pretoria Fields Brewery, of course, making nature's grown beers and organic agriculture and South Georgia farming in every beer. I want to talk about our event that we're going to have on October the 20th, Saturday, from starting at about 11 o'clock till 7 or 8 in the evening. We're opening our tap room on the farm. And so we'll have some farmhouse beers that hopefully we'll have at least one farmhouse ale that has been brewed there. We're going to have several speakers, at least 4, to discuss things like for Gordon, our Flint River keeper is going to be there and talk about irrigation and how that affects clean water supply and river flows. We're going to have Ryan from True Earth to talk about permaculture not Mike Ryan and not Liv Ryan.
No, he's a far flight away in Germany right now.
And not Liv Ryan.
But he does love farming, so that's his end game.
But Jess Ryan. And Jess Ryan is going to talk about permaculture and its effect and its healing effect on the dirt and ground and how it's going to change how Pretoria Fields Farm looks. I'm going to give a talk about the difference and how to change the difference between industrial farming and organic farming, and why we can't live without industrial farming, but how being able to scale up organic farming will actually make us healthier, and different ways that we are going to solve that problem in slow, steady steps. Claude Gallipy is going to talk about their vision with True Earth, and we're hoping to get several other speakers to have similar topics. So very excited about that event. We're also going to open the tap room. We will have Low Country Boil, southernly sourced crawfish, and hopefully rice. So please come out for that. That's October the 20th. Today we have Just Liv, and Just Liv I have been speaking to for the last 3 hours to help her come on and get this dream of permaculture and farming started. Liv has been a brewer. She's worked at several different brewers. She's also a chemist. She has a chemistry background, which we have that in common. And she has various other interests, which I'm sure she's going to tell us about, and I will shut up and let you speak. Hey, Liv.
Hi, hello. Yeah, a lot of varied interests, which kind of seem like they don't go together, but I like to think of them as like different points on a spider web and like coming down like a black hole of just my attention, interconnected somehow. And so definitely brewing has been one of them. It was really like my entryway. Honestly, the entryway was me walking away from pharmaceutical engineering as a college degree and being fed up and going into beer. My mom's really like proud of that one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's like you calling your dad and telling him you're going to get a PhD in Sanskrit and Greek. So yeah. That's the day everybody goes, well, I hope you get an academic job because you're not getting a real job.
And ironically, that I had a job in brewing before I had a college degree.
Yeah.
That's the ironic part. But I will say my experience in brewing is what inspired me to continue pursuing my degree in chemistry. And actually also everyone thinks that brewing, focuses on organic and organic chemistry and biochemistry, and it's all about the yeast and some water chemistry. No, it's all about the physical chemistry, and I did not know until I was in it. But it also ironically steered me back onto the path of chemistry. I came out the other side with a degree in chemistry and a job as a qualitative chemist at a carbon black plant, but also starting a brewery, and led me down the path led me down the path later to still pursuing the dream of new. I realized that like leaving pharmaceutical engineering wasn't enough, that I was still passionate about championing the proponent of that, and supporting and doing research and like really furthering nutraceuticals, which is like the real opposition of nutraceuticals.
Have you lived your whole life in America? You're from Europe, right?
So
did I make that up?
I call myself I'm not a Yankee, I'm a European import. And so because
What country?
Poland specifically. Ja mówić po polsku bardzo dobrze. Ja jest
Do you have a dual citizenship?
No, I don't.
Do you have any you are a citizen, right?
I married an American citizen, okay? All right, that is undisputed fact, and I have a SOFA stamp as well as an address and social security number for the United States. I pay taxes,
I was
okay?
just kidding.
I pay taxes.
Just kidding.
It's a sore subject because that was when Trump actually implemented the new laws with like immigration and everything. I went to go apply for a passport, and they told me my birth certificate was invalid, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, no, this is like, I was like, this is the original. And they're like, no, it's not. Where was your mother born? I was like, Beszyce, Poland, right? Cool, right? That's fine. It's fine. But I'm married to an American citizen, so
nice.
I
And
have
so how
every
did you
right
get,
to be
how
here.
did you get from there over here?
Ooh,
Slow boat.
Slow boat? Yeah.
No, it was actually a plane. And so like one of my earliest childhood memories though is from coming back from Poland to the United States. And according to my birth certificate, and as far as I know, I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Okay.
And that's the story I'm sticking to.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Is that what your birth certificate says?
right, exactly.
Maybe.
And so but in
Either
Poland
that
it
or
was
she's
really
a Polish spy. Which I'm sure there's a lot of Polish spies out there. So
I
Just
honestly
doesn't
don't
seem
feel
right.
the need.
Yeah,
Like, you
let's
know,
be honest.
I mean, once John Paul really took over the center stage of Catholicism, it was like, Poland, my sovereign nation. They were just like, after solidarity in Poland, there's really just kind of disappeared off the
So the
political
thing
agenda.
I really wanted you to talk about was you had an epiphany moment when you and I and Claude is our True Earth partner, were speaking. And so can you talk to your epiphany moment and how that's changed your well, not maybe necessarily changed, but focused you and what you think about that and the future? Or maybe that's a lot of questions.
I
but
was just like, there
maybe
was a lot. I was
maybe
overwhelmed with so many epiphanies.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please narrow down which
Yeah.
one, because I also had the Jurassic Park Kentucky Fried Chicken conspiracy epiphany.
You
as well.
did. But-
So
And that's fun to get
like-
into too, because that is long drawn out.
why do they look the same?
I know,
Why
exactly.
why
It's because it is
why
the
does
same.
Colonel Sanders look the same as Dr. John Hammond?
Right. I agree 100%. It's because it's, birds came from dinosaurs.
Yeah, and if they honestly find a velociraptor in the because global warming and melting the ice age, I think we should barbecue it for science.
Because I think it'll
And
taste,
it'll taste like chicken.
It'll taste like chicken.
Scientifically, for science.
Yeah,
for
either
science.
that or we're all in the Matrix, and that's the reason everything tastes like chicken. So it could
you know.
be.
That reptilian skin kind of tastes like chicken.
I mean, it is scaly. And that's actually, if you look at like the protein structure of like feathers, that it is more similar to scales than it is to actually mammalian hair because of keratin.
And that's why we got you today.
Is it?
To learn.
I don't know. I did not expect to like take this kind of turn
This one?
in it.
Okay,
I
huge.
definitely, like I said, I've got a lot of varied interests, and they do interlock. It just sometimes takes a while to like follow the yellow brick road back to the center of it. But I believe that is like my passion for nutraceuticals and actually like plant-based. And so way back when, I used to be a brewmaster at another brewery in Georgia, and I first heard about Pretoria and their vision and was like really inspired by them because that was the envision that I had hoped for the brew pub that I was working with. But I was really, really impressed with Pretoria Fields and what I was told about, the idea of linking organic farming with the actual source and then using it in craft beer. Because, there's a lot of debate about it, but original civilization based around craft brewing. And from my experience after
Or
Poland,
bread. Was it bread or was it beer?
We're gonna go
that's-
with beer because I still want a job. You know, like, you know,
I like it.
you know, that's like it's. Hey,
You were
it's-
easy. You were too easy.
We've
I'm
gone
sure
with
Eric will take the
history,
antithetical.
but we're gonna go with
beer
her story.
or bread. Which stopped? So in the Paleolithic versus Neolithic, something happened. And what people think happened was we either started farming and created bread, which allowed us to keep our farming products over a long period, or we took the grains, everybody got drunk, and everybody wanted to get more intoxicated. And so that created society. And then bread came because then we developed kilns and we were able to understand the propagation of whatever substance it was that yeast was.
I'm forming a theory on timeline right now is that inevitably, no matter what, probably beer started first because fermentation starts after a longer period of time. And so, that's when they discovered bread. The beer was started 2.5 weeks, however, earlier. All right.
Yeah.
With that.
I'll
But
agree
also,
with her.
like, if you think about brain psychology and neurology, is that so craft beer and actually unpasteurized fermentation processes, because of the yeast in it and the poor filtration, that I don't think they had cheesecloths or like centrifuges back in Mesopotamia. But I wasn't there, so I'm not going to speak for that.
Well, they might have had the cheesecloth. They might not have had the Mesopotamia,
True.
the centrifuge.
But that it actually was a great source of B12 vitamins, as it still is today. But the B12 vitamins is really essential to neural development, as well as folic acid and other things that were probably lent into the brain development for them to go ahead and build a kiln to bake the bread. Because I don't know about you, but have you ever had the Christ? Okay, I grew up very Polish Catholic. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a different level of
I'm
Catholic.
Episcopal Catholic. He
That's
grew up
like-
Catholic. So
that's-
we're all Catholic.
When
think
the
you're
Pope
Catholic
has a
too, aren't
question
you?
about dogma, he
No.
calls my mother.
Mormon?
Like that's
We actually went to a Polish Orthodox church for like probably a year and a half when I was growing up.
Yeah. It's a different. It's
I know that the bake sales, the pierogies were pretty darn good.
I actually used
what
to
I
make
remember.
pierogies once a year for the brewery at Omaha when we did bottling days of
And
our
we're going to
barrel
start
aged
that
stouts.
back up this fall.
That's.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yes, we
why
are.
wait for fall? I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
that's,
no. One of the things we're doing down at the brewery is getting a bakery and a food component to the downtown brewery. So
I love rye bread.
We
you're
haven't
right.
done it for a couple of years, but with everything that's happened in the past year, I don't think we can wait any longer to have that. It'll at least double, maybe triple, like our ability for the tap room, and it's
plus
a necessary and needed thing.
The potatoes that we're not utilizing for the pierogies can be utilized for vodka. So
That's a good idea.
Honestly, do you remember that? Sorry, speaking off to the fourth wall of. Do you remember that joke between all of the brewers that I was like, "That's the test if I keep my child or not. Is I'm going to give them a potato and see what they do with it. If my child just like eats the potato and that's it, that's like, well, sorry, you're not going to make it on the farm, buddy. But if my child like quarters the potato and grows more potatoes and uses part of the potato for the next crop. Part of the potato to eat and part of the potato to make vodka. I'll keep 'em.
At
I'll
what
keep
age
'em.
does this
Part of
test
it.
take place?
I mean, like honestly, children develop at all different ages. But since yeah, like at what
I'm
age
gonna
are you
put a
ready for farm
potato
work?
in his
Okay.
crib, and we'll see what happens.
We'll
from
see what
there.
happens to it. Yeah. If it just happens to get in his diaper and suddenly we get potato rot and root, because they'll root anywhere. And then
They will root.
somebody out there gets that joke.
That's when I visited Michael around Thanksgiving, I bought some potatoes and I left them. So the cabinet, honestly, I really do love and appreciate German architecture and engineering, and that's what really that's how I know I'm not just Polish, is because I just really appreciate all of their organization and like recycling programs and traditional brewing
You
and all
could be
that.
part Swiss too.
That's I'm with my grandmother being Edeltraut Ortenberger. There's really no denying it.
No, probably.
Like
No,
there's
I didn't know that prior to that statement.
there's no that. But I left some potatoes, and I guess Michael hadn't bothered to cook for himself or like whatnot. I came back for Christmas, and we had a little potato farm in the bottom drawer, and I was like, well, useful.
That happens. Oh.
So I actually donated those potatoes to feeding my wild beaver cause.
So earlier, we can talk about beavers in a second.
Oh, do we have it? That's another show.
That's a
I mean,
complete other
show.
That's a whole other show.
I'm really passionate about beavers. Okay.
I need a noise. I
There's one right over there by the
Actually,
sink.
we
It's
actually
great.
completely lost my train of thought. So
That you know what? We're all about no dams given, and I don't know.
Yeah,
these
honestly,
beavers-
this is like I didn't
I
even
don't
know that
the
was
be-
the
I think
name of
the
this
beavers weren't
podcast show.
They weren't
And
contrary to that whole thing.
one of the beaver documentaries that I really liked was like along the side of like, who gives a damn beavers?
They do.
we do. So damming. Yeah, actually, beavers would be against what we're trying to
That's
do.
what I'm
This
talking
is
about. We're
protecting the
trying-
shoal bass. So we're actually
No,
against beavers.
you know,
However,
actually, in
natural,
I also
small dams.
Small
we're
dams.
okay with.
Yeah.
so that's another thing is like some people have been against reintroducing beavers and rehabilitating the populations is because they're like it'll destroy the salmon. And so I forget what ecologist said, but he was just like, no, beavers taught salmon and fish to jump. And I was just like, oh,
That's exactly
because
correct,
they
yes.
actually they actually create a better breeding ground for and actually breeding as well as I guess like what would I'm not very
No,
good
it's
with
like
fish.
that dam's
for
like
them
a
to grow
natural
up.
filter.
It also is because
Think about
a
how
dam
clean that
doesn't
water
stop.
is below.
Exactly. And a dam doesn't stop the full flow of water through, it just slows it down. And so, because of the way that they actually built it using like silt, rocks, as well as like the timber and everything else, it naturally filters it out so it's cleaner as it goes along. But it also creates like shallow pools. And as it like, as with more mature beaver dams and as they pool up and become they start these ecological systems and everything else and actually the salmon and such prefer to jump and lay eggs in this area because it is actually a safer, better breeding
That's
and
awesome.
raising ground for them.
So right now, I'm
So
pro
it's not
beaver.
against shoaling. It might be for it.
I am.
You're pro
So,
beaver?
I am because Kirby's
If
farm
they weren't,
now-
and I guess what you're saying is if it wasn't a man-made huge dam that nothing could get through.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
So right
That's
now,
permeable.
we've been ducking
That's a
in
big
the
thing
buddy's
with
farm.
hempcrete as well and hemp.
and the water washed out the farm, like the beaver dam got washed out by the rain, and
That's part of the natural cycle of chaos.
That was holding all the water in the pond. So now the pond is like 8 inches deep.
Are the beavers still there though?
They are, and they're
Are they
working really
rebuilding?
hard. Yes.
To
Can I
rebuild.
come see?
Yes, you may. And I was wondering if, like, we were to help the beavers.
Oh, glorious day.
Like, by stacking stuff on that portion.
They'll
that
move it
washed out.
around.
I'm wondering if, like, they would take offense to it, or if they'd, like, go, oh, you know,
I
what? We can
wonder
just keep stacking
if a more
stuff.
symbiotic way would actually be to provide them more easily with building material than to build for them.
We can't plant more trees. They're not going to grow in time.
But so not just trees, but if you were to actually bring like felled limbs or
Two
actually
by fours.
uh,
They're really
I don't-
expensive.
not 2x4s.
Right now, wood
but,
is at a
I don't know,
premium.
like unused hemp, like unused hemp
unused hemp
stalks,
stalks, yeah.
and everything else like that.
There we go.
You can throw
But
'em out
also
there.
the structure of hemp itself would be really good for linking and actually latticing together, as well as trapping what they go ahead and. So part of what beavers do is that they also will dredge up silt and other debris from the bottoms and bring it up. And so beavers are actually also essential in kind of cultivating if a lot of really good farming land in the United States is actually because of beavers, however many hundred years ago, is because they would actually like till basically the soil underneath as well as like irrigate, creating their canals and everything else.
That's
and
awesome.
like redistributing the silt and all of that. Like I said, I'm really passionate about beavers. They're a keystone species in biology. But I think the reason I became really interested in beavers is because I made a like connection between beavers as well as hemp as the potential to be a keystone industry.
Nice. So tell me about your association between yeast health, beer, ground health, and human health.
And
Remember,
then-
we were talking about it. Remember, there was you
So many
had
things.
an awesome analogy between yeast.
Are we talking
health-
about? Are we going to
Yes.
talk about C-sections and all that?
Nah, well, you can.
I mean,
I'll
it
talk
kind
about
of
that.
is.
That's a doctor thing, so that's good. So, but the
I mean, I'm
yeast
not a
health-
doctor, but I do have a womb. So,
Yeah,
you know.
no, I
And
agree.
you did
100%.
say
That's why I had to go to the
Holiday
bathroom.
Express
Like, you
last night.
know, you
Yeah,
guys
it
don't
presses,
have
and we have a bigger bladder, and
Yeah.
so smaller thing.
That's. Yeah.
But you had a great analogy,
okay.
so I don't know if you remember it. But
I do.
Okay.
Which is actually rare. So it must have been a really good analogy
That's a
for
really
me to
good
even stick with it.
Yeah.
But so we were talking about. All right. A lot of my friends prior to this will tell you about like, Liv, did she ask you about your poop schedule? Because like, oh God, did Liv bring up poop? And okay, honestly, the first thing my husband said
At the farm, we
about-
actually love poop.
That right? Hello,
It's a
I
thing
grew
we
up.
love. We love
Oh,
poop.
like, all right. In Poland, we didn't even have outdoor. Like, we didn't even have. Actually, one of my first.
Everybody in America
my
is
first
too
cognizant
concerned about poop.
remembered memory about America, like me forming an opinion about America, was like coming over from Poland and like on a plane with a bathroom. I was very wary of it, and I was like, "What? Like, all right." And then coming to America and seeing an indoor bathroom and plumbing, I was like, America, you can shit inside. Like, wow, no wonder they think they're better. Like, wow. Like, forget like these other things. People are like, oh, McDonald's and like Disney movies are like, you can shit inside.
That's awesome.
Okay, all right, talk about, and that's probably my obsession with like pooping. Like, I was like, wow, poop, wow. But actually, one of the things that when I was going over to Germany for the first time, Michael Ryan actually, my husband actually asked me, he was like, please, for the love of God, do not talk about poop. And I was like, that's who I am. Like, that's integral to being Liv. Like, he was like, just please
You
stop.
stifled it. Did you stifle it? Did you talk about it?
I talked about it actually. So, all right. Actually, it was a very
help it.
interesting meeting because I was at a brewery, a little beer garden, shall we say, in Germany, and some people who happened to be like at my like communal table, and we were talking. He's like, "Yes, I ordered the red lentil soup. It's really good for colon health." And actually, he was a professor for one of the universities in German, and his research was in colorectal cancer.
There you go.
And
That was your
based on-
segue.
mine.
I was like-
And do you know what it was like? The whole side of, honestly, maybe like
You had a stroke,
the
and then
limes,
like you just completely.
the limes. I was just like one whole side was twitching as I was resisting the urge, and I was like, "Let me talk to you about gut health and poop." Oh God, it was a lot. And a bit I was like, be good. Fuck, poop. Like, it was just it. That, and also I've grown, so like poop is always on my mind, whether like where's the nearest bathroom. And you know, people are like, you know, social anxiety and things like that. And I'm like, social anxiety, the only thing I'm worried about is like, am I afraid to like poop in front or near these strangers? Like, you know, it you know, but it plays a central role in our lives.
So healthy yeast is
Oh,
like
yes.
in healthy yeast and healthy beer. And so if we keep our
Micro
yeast,
gut
keep
flora.
our micro beer flora and micro gut flora and micro flora for the ground itself, and that's how your poop schedule actually relates to farm health, actually relates to beer health.
Yeah, and that's
Right?
so it's not just about poop of people, it's also about poop of animals and
animals
everything
and
because
yeast and-
that's,
yeah.
I don't know if it is an actual like already described law of the universe, but like everything poops,
Yeah.
including yeast, which we harness to be carbon dioxide as well as alcohol for that. But that's a lot of people today who are suffering. There's been a rise recently in within like the past generation or so with autoimmune health issues and everything else like that. And a lot of it has been linked to, as we described more. And actually, one of my sorority sisters actually did her whole PhD on gut health and microbiome and everything else like that. And so another poop sister. But connecting that, you know, hello. And actually, the side effects of my Crohn's and IBS and everything else were less painful, and I guess I don't want to say like apparent, but you know, it was counterintuitive because the more craft beer and like kombucha and gut health that I consumed, the less of a problem or issue with IBS and Crohn's that I had. And, some people was like, yeah, because you substituted a liquid diet. Actually, because craft beer is not inoculated, kombucha is based off scobies with probiotics, is that I was continuously populating in a
your
healthy
gut
way.
with a new, healthier bacteria, which is the same idea. So
Yep.
one of the things we're going to do, and one of the things you're participating in, and hopefully other folks are this refocus of what our farm is going to be. So Pretoria Fields Farm, we've focused the last few years. We've done the organic farming part, but we've really focused on monoculture. Monoculture meaning large volume production of one thing. So we tried to produce corn, or we tried to produce wheat, or we tried to produce X. So I looked at several different sources and then was shown a movie, The Biggest Little Farm, and they actually put into words what I wanted to do. And also a couple of consultants, and one being Eli from True Earth and Claude from True Earth. And the idea of really getting our compost and vermiculture and using compost tea to heal our soil, which I think that is very analogous to healing gut, which is very analogous
to
what you were talking.
re-inoculate it.
Yes.
And that's So sorry to butt in, but
No, you're
that's what we were talking about was the difference really generationally with yeast is that so as a brewer, it's not my job to make beer. As a brewer, it's my job to make as antiseptic and antibacterial, sterile of wort as possible, and then to allow the yeast to make beer. And so that's the same thing as the rise we've seen with autoimmune conditions, with women having babies, the more cesarean sections and like less going through the vaginal canal and less breastfeeding is the less inoculation of a blank slate with probiotic and everything else. And so that's the same thing with yeast, is that with wort is that you want to pitch yeast. You want to give the microbe you want the best head start chance to outcompete the other bacteria that are inevitably going to be present and get in. Unless it's sour, so that's like a whole nother game. But it, again, is like the whole concept of you're selecting for microbial inoculation. And honestly, the being able to inoculate and like microbes actually aren't bad when people, that's the thing too with like a lot of the hand sanitizer stuff and all of that. When you continuously wash your hands, we have, besides inside of our guts having a microflora ecosystem, we also have an ecosystem on the outside, and we want to have the balance between that be a larger majority of the stuff that basically outcompetes for the bad things. And that's when you have an imbalance in that, and that's when you can get MRSA or staph and everything else like that. And so it's basically creating a way, almost like as a brewer to make wort, but like a brewer of compost tea, and actually recycling and reusing organic compounds to make the best kind of wort for the soil to be able to inoculate it for the best nutrients to then be consumed later on.
Awesome. Yeah. So part of the vermiculture, which is worms. Yeah. So exciting. So vermiculture, and then the compost, create the compost tea. And then, so one of our next buildings, so once we get the tap room, which is going to October 20th, once again, everybody come out. So once we get that finished and completed, then we're going to start working on our vermiculture and compost area. We'll be able to show people how to do worm propagation, how to create compost tea, how to use that with other fertilizers in an organic fashion to help heal your soil. And so that's the component that I think is the most important for our farms, because you can place either 100% more nitrogen or 30% of that, and if your soils and your inputs, so you're still harvesting, but if you have that that permaculture environment, you just don't have to put as much inputs because the inputs are already there. They're recycled themselves, or they're created by your farm animals, or your pigs, or your cows, or your fruit trees.
I really also like the concept of like being able to replenish from reusable sources. Again, like recycling and being able to, less of recycling and more of repurposing. And so from taking, it really is also about changing the culture and the mindset of that, like, oh, well, like we only want this and the rest is waste. No, the rest isn't waste. The rest just has different purposes. And so I really do like thinking of it like that, because it really does have other purposes and to be continued to use and to continue to contribute and honestly like keep the cycle on the wheel going.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree.
So cannabis, you like cannabis? Is it positive or negative? What's your feelings?
So I actually think that while there's a lot of definitions, and that's one thing with it being a beginning industry, is actually having to find definitions for certain things, like the debate between full spectrum and broad spectrum. And actually, I really like that Claude came up with the term, and he's using CBX instead of just CBD. So a lot of people don't know that CBD is not actually an acronym. It's actually just a hyphenated, convenient acronym for cannabidiol. And so there's so many. And actually, as science improves and more people take an interest as a scientific study, more defined cannabinoids keep on coming up. But probably the two most talked about now are CBD as well as THC. And so they're both present in marijuana as well as hemp plants. And so that's another thing to really distinguish for people, is the difference between hemp as well as marijuana. And it's honestly not enough to just decriminalize marijuana. You also have to destigmatize cannabinoid use in general. And the best way to do that is through education. And
so you started off on something, and then you kind of segued into something else. But what's the X?
So CBDX is so that's it's actually a fairly common.
Means variable. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
So,
he uses
like,
it. He's
oh,
using
you know,
the
people say
analogy
like
for
X, Y, and
variable.
Z.
So
I
it could
gotcha.
be CBG,
You can solve for
CBN, CB.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
you could solve for it. That's
Yes,
right.
yeah, exactly. It just means that it's like or like hashtag or like blank space or like underscore. It just means it's a cannabinoid, just like it's cannabidiol. So CBD, the diol form, versus if you had CBG or CBN, and each one of these is a unique chemical structure and property that have different effects and uses that are best uses. And so, but they're all in the cannabinoid family. And so a lot of them, they're all grouped in the chemical class of cannabinoids. They do have specific uses. However, they also get the like the illegal drug stigma use of another cannabinoid that a lot of people know as delta-9 THC, which is the psychoactive component in marijuana versus hemp. And so hemp and hemp plants also, there's so many different kinds of strains and types of that, but marijuana is also marijuana is a hemp plant, but not all hemp plants are marijuana strains, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does make sense.
And so so our CBDs, and so there's different CBDs,
Yes.
right? And they're chemically different.
It's
And
from,
there's so different strains of hemp plants produce higher peaks of those particular
yes,
plants, right?
And so the best way I can equate it from like a brewer's perspective and to other people who are interested in brewing, and it might be easier to, this is how I kind of relate it to other people, is that honestly, hemp strains is very similar to hop strains. And so, and they're actually they are closely related as plants, but the whole chemical molecular constituents of them is also very similar chemistry-wise. And so what gives strains their different characteristics and their different uses and different properties is actually their blends of terpenes. The same way that different hops have different flavors, aromas, are better for bittering or better for dry hopping, is again terpenes. And so terpenes are actually just, it's a class of organic compounds, chemistry compounds that all aromas
I'm
and
gonna stop you real
flavors are
quick.
with
So
that.
so in the bigger class of phytochemistry, meaning plant chemistry, so then you have this particular part, which is completely different chemically than the CBD, than the cannabidiols, which contain, and then the cannabinoids, which contain THC.
So actually,
right?
cannabinoids are a subclass of terpenes.
Of terpenes,
and
okay.
so what gives cannabis that a descriptive skunky smell, I'm looking at Austin, another brewer, is that when you actually process certain hops a certain way, that they also have, and when you wanted to deem their freshness and appropriate usage, is that like skunkiness. Skunkiness, however, in actual beer is also a negative off flavor effect from light struck from alpha acid isomerization, is where these chemical components, so actually the terpenes in liquid and in beer, once they become light, they actually it has enough bond energy where they begin to change. So that's why, and they give off this skunky marijuana kind of smell. Well, the reason marijuana smells skunky is because it's a blend of these other terpenes.
Right, and terpenes are in everything from bananas to peaches
isoamyl acetate.
So there are many different types, and then these just happen to be certain types of the terpenes.
Wouldn't you say that G14 is better than G13?
I actually don't have enough scientific evidence.
This summer at Pretoria.
But it really does. Terpenes is essential to flavor and aroma chemistry in anything, really. In candles, if you want to go into perfumes, if you want to go into all that. And actually, cannabis and hemp are historically known to be really great sources of naturally diverse terpenes. And so that was actually one of the things. Besides a brewer, I also worked for Pretoria as an I was saying X-ray tech, but that's wrong. As I started off as an extraction technician, and then
chemist,
worked,
extraction tech,
a laboratory
chemical process. Hey,
chemist.
so that's it. That'd be a very interesting thing, and I don't think we've discussed it on here. Like, just simply, not super complex. How do we extract our CBD components from hemp?
And so,
because we go through and we take it out, we distill it.
That's
right?
If we really, so there's two main ways if you like blank look at CBD extraction from hemp. And so me trying to explain to people that no, I'm not producing drugs in someone's basement, and this is a viable career option. The U.S. Army, who is very curious as my husband's employer, what his crazy purple-haired wife is up to. I always used to joke with my mom that, and she's like, "What are you gonna do?" When I was said originally that I was like, "Fuck chemistry, I'm just gonna be a brewer." And she's like, "What are you gonna do if that doesn't pan out?" I was like, "Well, I guess making drugs and meth is my fallback career." So close. so close.
Permaculture's nowhere. You've landed in permaculture. It's nowhere near drugs. Yeah, so you're good. You made it.
You know that moment of fear when you're like, damn, mom's always right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give in. Mariola will not win on this one.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Mariola.
Mariola.
Like,
Mariola.
like nipples.
Mariola?
Like
Mary Ariola.
I'm actually wearing my shirt.
Mary Ariola.
To further...
Okay, if you
didn't know that if you didn't already know that I wasn't from the South and had a genteel Southern belle disposition and sense of humor, or normal neural connections and everything else like that.
Normal neural connections. That was
from
awesome.
the South.
You just insulted every
South.
lady in the South. That's awesome.
Well, it'll explain when.
But it was beautifully done because normal neural connections is not something that most people would make.
Most people wouldn't be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna really fucking piss my mom off and like just solidify the disappointment by honoring." So, your body is a sacred temple and should be treated as such. And so tattoos themselves, and then to have a tattoo of a stripper, and then to have a tattoo of a stripper in honor of your mom. It was just too perfect, though. So when I was
it actually looked like her.
Honestly, so all
No,
right.
yeah, put it down. No, you're good. You're
But
good.
it's essential to the story plot.
It's essential.
Essential. It can be edited out.
So I actually, this is totally unplanned, but I'm wearing my stripper shirt today.
Oh,
It's crushable.
Crushable. When I was at Beacon, I actually did a beer for the Claremont Lounge, honoring
Nice.
the Claremont
Blondie.
Lounge.
I
But you said cheers. Go Louis Grizzard.
I really
Not that I've ever been there, honey.
Yeah, exactly.
never. It's a favorite of mine. And so the Claremont Lounge is the two ladies featured on my shirt are Blondie Strange and Cassie. And so Sarah is our graphic designer for Beacon, and we started this project, and it wasn't a project about like, yeah, strippers. It was a project about like, so it's not, hi, hello, I'm a lady. And I'm a lady in a position that like, you know, society doesn't necessarily like expect. And so my whole thing was that, you know what, she made a lifestyle and a living off of doing something that she is uniquely good at and proud at. And that's the thing, like, do what you want to do while being who you want to be. And that's the
And
thing
be
to be
good
proud
at it.
of. Yeah.
good at
And be good at it.
And
be good
that's
at
the
it.
thing to be proud of. And so I really saw it more as like an opportunity. And so she actually had been asking for someone to like make a beer, and she had a contract with Sweetwater and it fell through however many years ago. And somehow, you know, Beacon was in the
Yeah.
position
Hey,
to
look.
make a beer
Let's make a
called
beer.
Crushable. And so for those of you who don't know who the wondrous, beautiful
Yes,
Blondie
I do.
Strange is that she was known for crushing beer cans.
on her
It used to be PBR, and actually one of her cans is in their Louvre Museum. Like, I'm a part of culture, even if it's through that. And I just
What
really
museum is
believed in. I had a lot of people tell me that I wouldn't get the
The Louvre.
contract, that I wouldn't
The
be able to
Louvre?
like brew
No way.
this beer,
what she said.
that I wouldn't
Sounds
be
good,
able
though.
to like pull this off.
Did you say
and
Louvre?
use it.
Did you say the Louvre?
Lourve? Did I spell
Like
it
in
correctly?
Paris, France?
Yes.
That can's in there?
Yeah. And
Holy
she kissed the
Smoky
bottom.
Joes.
She's an icon. She
Holy
is an
smoking
icon.
Joes.
No, look. That's Holy Smokes.
And
I'm gonna get you a little bit more refocused.
oh yeah.
So-
So
No.
well, and then
Yes,
There she is.
that's awesome.
my
That's her?
commitment. Well, it was to honor like the project itself, but also to honor like the inner me. So this is my, like I say, my secret stripper.
Your secret
The
stripper.
secret one.
My secret stripper. But so Sarah got Blondie and I got Cassie in my arm. But talking with Cassie and everything else, and like actually like talking and connecting to them off stage and like getting to know them as other people was like really, it was again the opposite of, I mentioned this, the opposite of addiction, why I really got into craft beer.
Just connection.
Outside of pharmaceuticals, because pharmaceuticals can cause a lot of
Addiction,
addictions.
yeah.
But the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection.
Yeah.
And so this was a really genuine, authentic human connection with other people. And she's known for lighting her nipples on fire, with sparklers or matches. And her birthday is the same as Mariola's.
That's awesome.
And I could not
Ariel.
surpass.
Mary.
Ariel.
Yeah. One time somebody asked me, actually, they're like, what's your mom's name? And I was like, Mariola. And they're like, what's your grandma's name? I was like, Edeltraut. And they're like, let me get this straight. Your mother's nipples and your grandma's buttfish. And I was like, yeah, and my sister's name is Ingrid. Like, I really lucked out with Olivia Ann.
One you snorted.
Yeah, and my dad's Carl with a K. What to it? Ah,
Did you say anal trout?
Yeah, she did.
yeah.
That's why you snorted.
That was what I snorted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just like the look on Joel's
Fair enough.
face. Like, he was just like, wait a minute. He's like, so you're telling me
If you made
your
this far
mom's
into the
name is
podcast-
Nipples?
You have won because this is awesome.
Yeah, this doesn't happen often.
Welcome to the Live Show.
There you go.
Just kidding. That's a Kathy Demetrius and I kind of nicknamed like my random squirrel out for Sperman connection. Hey, but you know what? To Kathy's like strength as a leader is that she really empowers you to like to be able to get the things done in your own way. And I was coming out with some really fantastic yields and purity, even if I had my own little side
You're a brilliant
projects.
chemist. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're a brilliant chemist.
Eccentrica is one thing I've definitely heard. But
So
I don't know
our-
about brilliant.
Our concept is to take that and utilize what we're going to take from the compost tea and make a food forest. Do you like that concept? You mean I kind of presented it to you earlier, and
It's actually
And that
very when you said that. So same girl with the crush ball and my matching stripper tattoo is when I got back from Germany. We were talking about compost, and she was like, "Yeah, you can make compost tea." And so she's actually like one of my closest friends and a great source of inspiration. And we're very like-minded. Actually, several years ago, we thought about starting a kombucha company because that's something probiotics. Got to get that poop schedule right. There's
Poop
an
help.
easier way than poop transplants, okay? And it involves alcohol. Like,
she was
I
telling
mean,
she was telling me about poop transplants on the break, and they're horrible.
I'm just real passionate. There's better
You would
ways,
actually-
guys.
You would actually inject somebody else's poop into
Yeah.
into your intestines
Yeah.
somewhere.
yes,
That sounds absolutely awful.
I know.
Why not just eat a salad or
Okay.
8 salads?
Or better yet,
100 salads.
Or
what if
100
we came
salads.
up with a way that you can get that same kind of
In
microflora
a
blend
Pretoria beer?
in a Pretoria kombucha?
Oh my God, we should make that.
gosh, that's awesome.
We should do that.
That's-
In fact, we should do it tomorrow.
I'm looking at you, Austin. You wonderful flavor creator.
Kombucha in my brewery.
Well, okay, not in there, but it's
Yeah. But we have a chemist
poop smears for you.
or two.
We have 2 chemists.
Yeah.
We have
And
a
we
couple
have
chemists. We have
somebody
some pharmacists. Yeah,
We have somebody who can make
Away
poop
from
taste
the
good.
clean.
yeah.
True.
Apparently,
So,
who knew? Who knew?
The clean juice.
yeah. Austin will work on that tomorrow.
But with the compost tea and everything. So Sarah, and honestly, like if you guys think that I'm eccentric, like Sarah is my partner in crime, takes me stride for stride, but also like centers and grounds
Who's
me.
Sarah?
You'll have to meet her one day. She's amazing.
Okay.
She did. Do you like my tattoo? She's the one who did the original artwork for the
Okay.
can.
So okay. So
Um,
Sarah drew it.
She drew all of the artwork for all of the beacon cans, and like actually on my shirt as well. I was kind of sad because the fishnets didn't come through as well, but it's fine. I was going through that BB Red Rider, A Christmas Story kind of. We also had a fishnet leg lamp at the brewery.
Nice.
Did you?
Very
At
essential.
Beacon?
At Beacon.
Nice. Why don't we
And
have
we
one
had
of that?
Tom won't let us.
Damn it.
Let's
Why
blame
not?
it- I don't know. Let's blame it on him. Nobody asked me. I'd have said yes.
That's what
You know I'd
maybe
have said yes.
maybe I really like the
Gryffindor would have
fishnet
said- Gryffindor, yeah.
leg
Would have
lamp
said
because
yes.
I'm only
Yeah.
5
So-
feet tall, so like I'm real envious of people who do have legs because I just got like
Yeah.
I just got like walking stumps, you know.
Ever since I look at Joe's nipples, I've been.
What?
so-
What?
My son, he comes up like I come up to about his chest. So to look like up like this at my, so it's,
Hey,
And you're
kid.
pretty tall,
That's
so
good,
I probably
yeah.
would. I like
He's
basket
super
belly
tall.
button view.
Yeah, definitely. Now, awesome discussion. So, like, I'm really
Sorry to sidetrack. First with poop and now nipples.
I'm really excited about the whole idea of permaculture, and I want to explain it a little bit. And so,
yes,
it puts
please do,
into-
because I'm
it-
also
It puts into words what I've been trying to say, and so what we've been trying to apply. And I think the reason. So I think my epiphany. So we were talking about your epiphany earlier.
I've got a lot every day.
My epiphany with this was just understanding the language a little bit more, and so understanding the language and the science of it. So I understand scientific terms, and one of the things was one of the permaculturists started talking about large volume monoculture. And so large volume monoculture would be farming 2,000 acres of peanuts, farming 70,000 head of cattle, farming 3 miles square of corn out in the Midwest. Well, so you have to be very specific as far as your ground nutrients. The resource is very specific in what it extracts and what it needs, but yet as far as biodiversity and its ability to repopulate the soil with the nutrients it needs for the next, it's just limited. It's very limited when you go for one thing. And then the idea with permaculture is multiple things working together to create a symbiosis that that actually produces energy, doesn't take energy. And in this particular sense, work as defined as an input that's put into the system is consistent with a negative. And the reason it's a negative is because if the system is functioning properly, then work that's put into the system should actually be taken away from something.
And that's where I made the connection earlier was that like how beavers are considered keystone species, that you have certain plant species that are also called keystone species because they really start the chain of events of work to unfold naturally for the best benefit of everybody. And it's kind of really also like with the ripple effect. And I think we were talking about also the analogy of like cogs, and that you really only have to turn the first wheel, and if the cogs are placed properly, that they will turn each other. And then, one of the laws of physics, once it's in motion, it'll continue to stay in motion. And everything, there's inputs and outputs for everything. And just manipulating the placement of the cogs or the rotation or, in a specific sequence to get the right outputs so it feeds into the next input kind of thing.
All right, before we digress into entropy.
I really thought about naming my dog Entropy because she just like to fuck shit up. She's just a ball of chaos. Like, whoa, that girl.
Let me just ask
Side
you.
note, never get a Shiba.
Keystone agricultural products. Name like 3.
With keystone, so what like a keystone species in ecology is really one that like starts, so like a beaver, when they build the dam and they create that environment that has kind of where the lake starts to pull up, and then you have a lot of willows and other plant life, but it also forms a really good place for the trout and the salmon to go ahead and breed, but also for like tadpoles, also an insect biodiversity, willows that also brings in moose and a lot of the basically like shelter and feeding ground and homes for all these other species. Is that if you think about keystone species in plants, not necessarily from like a commodity, like a monoculture commodity kind of perspective, which would be something like traditional farming with like just wheat or just corn, also fuck ethanol subsidies. But like
she threw that in there.
Just throwing that in there.
Listen, I was very passionate about ethanol subsidies and and like fuels, and then also biofuels, and then biodiesel that I hunted down. So when I was in school for chemistry, I actually focused my research in heterogeneous catalysts, specifically for palladium catalysts for catalytic converters and converting.
That's what Iron Man used.
Did he really?
Yeah, he used palladium.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's very expensive. It's very expensive.
Apparently, it's pretty rare. It's only found in.
It's like $300. It was $300 a grant and catalytic converters.
He has the Gryffindor T-shirt. He's got a lot of Avengers T-shirts. We've not seen them all,
actually.
I honestly, this is terrible, but I don't have the attention span to like sit down and watch documentaries. So podcasts have been like a game changer. Austin, you're laughing because you spent a day with me before. I need to like.
I think so.
Let's talk about poop again.
I think they know too. That was pretty funny. So back to what are the keystone species?
Sorry, I just realized like
bees.
Can I ask you a question?
Just name 3
Are
of
bees
them,
a
just so we
keystone
can
species?
plant them.
Would bees be?
So like
Because I heard that
I have the stripper
Einstein's-
tattoo for
can't
my
plant the
mom,
bees.
but I want a bee tattoo for myself.
Oh, you're saying it
And,
has to be? Well, no, beavers
like-
you can't plant.
No.
Actually,
See,
they
you check
are.
out
They
agricultural-
replanted beavers in Great Britain right now.
I don't doubt they did. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. I just want you to tell me the agricultural keystone product, like plants.
So actually, I believe that in my studies and interest in beavers here, but also bees are definitely another keystone species. And I don't know if that like other scientists agree, but I'll prove data
Einstein
for that
agreed
later.
because Einstein said,
that could be a whole doctorate.
"Yeah,
However,
How many doctorates am I going to get after this day?
I don't know. You should get a
That's
couple.
honestly, side note, side business.
mean-
Please email me at livelonic@gmail.com if you need inspiration or ideas for a doctorate, and I'll send you at least 5 journal articles to start your research. Okay? I got a lot of ideas. Most of them around poop, but it's fine.
Most of them around poop.
It's not just poop, it's outputs, okay? All right, it's outputs. But I really do think that I kind of made an analogy between hemp as like a keystone, not just a keystone species in agriculture aside, because honestly, if you really think about it, is that like nothing is in isolation by itself. And that's really what I think as an evolved species is that we really need to move towards is embracing diversity, because and that's like honestly not just with like plants and ecology and everything else like that but like we could really take a page out of the beavers book, is like if you embrace diversity and not just celebrate it but also create a space for it, is that it really like redefines adversity, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes total
But
sense.
that's like, so hemp is, I really think that hemp is a keystone species, but not just limited to the view of agriculture. I think hemp is a keystone species in terms of industry, because there's so many uses. So they also have hybrid strains. We talked about like how they have multiple strains for different uses. They have hybrid strains, so you don't just have the like butter flour for consumable use that can be turned into distillate for medicinal products that can be actually just used into smokable products. The roots themselves are known to be historically really good for like making teas and things like that.
Antipyretic.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's just so many uses, but also the stalks and stems themselves have been known that's where you get the majority of your fiber for. But also in what I have learned
And so the fiber
from,
can be used
The
for what?
shirt is
oh
totally
my God,
hemp.
the fiber for,
It's
is
a
it?
hemp shirt.
Is it really?
Well, it's like 50%.
Lies.
Is it really? That's cool.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's actually, so I have taken a very strong side interest in repurposing some of the, again, repurposing instead of recycling, just because it's, again, changing the stigma around, like, recycling. People are like, oh, you're taking trash and you're going to make it something else. Repurposing, I'm taking an output and it's a new input kind of thing. And so that's like stems for fiber, but also a lot of those waxes and tars, as well as like spent biomass. So when you extract a lot of the cannabinoids and plant oils, but you leave behind the plant structure. And what do you do with that?
What's the difference between hemp oil and CBD oil?
So hemp oil itself, so
we
when
should
they
have
talk
talked about this at the beginning.
Oh man,
We should have.
Yeah, because
we should have made this a
For those of you that
9-part
tuned
hemp
in,
series.
like, 50
After all
some
these
odd
beers,
minutes.
you're still here.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's been entertaining.
Do we offer a coupon card at a coupon code at the end of
At
like
the
this
end, if you actually
podcast
make it
for
a
a six
podcast,
pack?
we'll give you a coupon code for a
I
six
mean,
pack.
because people go on
Free tour.
people go online and they're like, oh, well, I can get hemp oil.
Again, it comes down to like, that's the same thing. And people can go on Amazon and be like, yeah, I can get toilet paper. Do you really want recycled cactus, or are you going to spend the extra $2 for like
real toilet paper.
exactly
Yeah.
2-ply
Or
cashmere?
Just get a bidet.
I do. Okay, here's the thing.
He's Italian. Sorry.
I really do appreciate
half
the
Italian.
environmental aspect of a bidet, but I fucking hate the sensation of my butthole being wet. Like,
Totally get that.
I just said that for the Europeans that tuned in.
that's
Yeah.
like, honestly, that's the most un-European thing about me, is that like shitting outside, fine, but like wet butthole, not for me.
Yeah.
Not for
Bidet,
me.
still like
Right.
They can't put it a little drier. in
My
there
mom
next
said
to
I
it?
was
That'd be nice.
I
mean,
potty
that's an
trained very quickly.
Americanization.
We should
That should
invent
be the
one.
Americanization of the
Why don't we just
bidet.
invent the
So you hit the
dryer?
bidet.
Yeah.
Everything comes out. You're doing good. Wet. Whatever.
So you're
Huh?
talking.
And then
You're
we'll call
basically
it the-
talking
yeah.
about. You know what that reminds me of? It's the air knife or the CO2 knife.
It is heating your butt at the same time.
All
It
right.
is in your butt.
Honestly, yes. When I went for a Master Brewers Association meeting to Monday Night Brewing Company, and so I was like, oh, may I please use the restroom? And they're like, oh, you're in for a treat.
They have
And it was
bidets
called.
at Monday Night
It was
Brewing?
called. It was in like their offices, and it was called the VIP poo poo or the VIP poo poo. I don't know, but I was just like, oh. It was a spray. It was like they probably use spray paint. I don't
See,
know.
they
I wasn't
should've-
there at Michael's when they picked out the supplies, but it was a gold bidet. But the seat was heated. There were so many buttons and settings. It was kind of overwhelming. And I was just like,
Yeah. Did one of those buttons hit the Pretoria dryer?
But when you,
Coming out with that next week.
but honestly, what if you did have like reusable, they have reusable like toilet paper, reusable paper towels. What if you had reusable toilet paper that was nice and soft, but also enriched with like nutrient hemp seed oil? But
I think I
after,
want to use that more than once.
but
don't want that.
after
not a
your
thing.
butthole has been washed,
Yeah.
okay.
So let's the hemp seed though is actually what I was getting at.
I've actually the hemp
that-
seed is so
the
popular
hemp
in
seed-
Germany.
yeah.
What were we talking about before?
Otters. No, just
Otters.
kidding. We segmented from beavers being wonderful to the dangers of an otter.
Yeah, you
So
hate otters.
I want to finish. So we've been going on for more than an hour now. I want to finish with this idea of healing beers and using the earth for different medicinal purposes. So
and so
because there's we got real fans that are here at this point. So they should get our nitty gritty of what we're trying to do.
First
at
of
the
all,
farm.
I
That's why they
appreciate your
tuned in.
patience. Okay, hey, thank you,
After
gratitude.
an hour.
But that's honestly the whole path that led me away from pharmaceuticals and into nutraceuticals. And that quote from that book that I was reading earlier, where history becomes legend and legend becomes myth, and that really goes into part of connecting with the whole human culture, human culture throughout, is again using an evolution, honestly, with like species and the world as a whole, is that they have developed symbiotic relationships. And actually, Claude would really like this topic with aquaponics and with his fish,
Right.
and all of that. And so it's not, some people are like, it's anti-vegan because you're using animals for utilizing them for a byproduct for a purpose. But I don't know if if you're harnessing the natural wild ability that, or recreating the environment. I consider it a lesser evil to recreate a natural environment to get that versus not being ignoring that magic really of what's happening,
Right.
to go completely synthetic and petroleum
Because they didn't
based.
know what was affecting them when they were drinking things. So maybe it'd be alcohol, psilocybin,
Also, like,
whatever.
witchcraft and how it went into
and
apothecary
so suddenly
and
they were seeing
modern
visions,
pharmaceuticals.
and then that
People got burned
the
at a
visions.
stake.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Visions became witchcraft.
And how many
But then
survived
some
after burning, and were they just like, my bad? Can
some
you imagine
visions
life insurance plans
survived
back
after
then? What the payouts would have been? What the accidental death
Yeah,
payouts?
sorry, we burned
She
her
didn't come
out.
up from drowning.
How
She did
interest-
not survive.
How interesting that certain visions became witchcraft and certain visions became medicine.
Hey, and that's honestly what that would be a really interesting, anthropological
idea.
study.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. Somebody could get a doctorate on that.
Honestly,
too.
my best guess would be
There is
the ones that
actually
became
anthropological chemistry.
science
I'm sure
were the
we're
ones that were
spelling out
able to be
doctoral,
Yeah, we're
monopolized.
putting out ideas all the time.
yeah,
That's
what
like
we
I
do.
said, email me if you're stuck
Yeah.
and have trouble.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a million doctorates on poop that could be done.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot of theses that
so
could
you
be
can
done.
make beers out of mushrooms?
Yes, and so actually, while I was at Beacon, I made 2 different mushroom beers. One was so I did an Alice series, and so the last one was actually it was. The label was super cool with gold foil. Sarah actually hand did the watercolor for the background. And so that was really my experiment in kind of fucking with humans' sensory perception as
Sure.
well. Is if
Gonna
you
have
don't
to
know,
edit that out.
well, oh yes, sorry, I didn't.
Just that one
Listen,
word.
I learned English in New Jersey. My first,
Jersey.
good. My first words in English were actually "fucking damn it," and it was during the consecration of the Eucharist. Oh well, I remember being so proud. This is another really concrete childhood memory that has stuck with me even after all the concussions from
probably my
lacrosse.
fault.
Is that I was like, oh yes, I can't wait to show my parents, yay! And I remember here's the big moment, and it got quiet, and I stood up, and I was like, fucking damn it! And are you proud? Are you proud of me? And my
What age
mom
was
looked
this?
at my dad.
What age was this? How old were you?
Honestly, probably 6.
3?
It's like a Christmas story. Like, dad throws the thing, he's trying to get some help there. Yeah. So totally.
But I was very disappointed in the
In the reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet.
And so, that honestly was
Happens.
probably the pinpoint of childhood trauma, going into really imbuing and dwelling in the concept of both Jewish guilt and Catholic shame. Like that's where it came. And I was like, oh, English is bad. And so in ESL, and I was like, oh, Spanish must be good. Like,
What about your native tongue?
Polish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still speak that and
Yeah. but
speak
does
it at home and with my
does
grandparents.
it sound nicer when you said those words in Polish?
Kurwa mać była. No,
Yeah,
honestly,
dude,
and
that
honestly,
sounds very
I don't
angry.
know.
That sounds better to
like,
me.
Maybe it's better.
It's better. It's
'Cause I
definitely
have
better.
no idea
I
what you
remember
said.
being even older than fucking damn it in church, being like, oh, like gówna, like around Polish people, and we're like, like that. Because surprise, as a child, I even was like, oh, poop. So gówna is the Polish word for shit, and that's all I had heard my grandmother. Okay, as a child and as a species, how we learn language is from we pick it up before we can read. And so I was like, oh yeah, gówna, and they're like, and I was like, yeah,
Apparently you
gówna.
heard that before.
I'm like, so, and they were just like,
Gówna.
that's shit. And I'm like, yeah. And so I guess my like predisposition or obsession with talking about poop started even before I knew the better, more socially accepted colloquial terms. Like, yeah, whatever. But yeah.
Nice. Very good. Well, I think as far as today, we probably reached
sorry about editing,
Probably reached
Austin.
our end. It was March 20th, not October 20th. If you've made it to this point, for the farm.
We're gonna have to go back and edit March. It'll be saying October, but it'll say March.
Hopefully, we'll have some unique beers. We'll have some good talks on both organic farming as well as permaculture. We'll talk about vermiculture with our local expert, and
I'll be there on
hopefully I'll be
composting.
like more focused on being able to talk about like mushrooms, not just in beer, but
I'll
also
be there
like
on the side
as
if you
in
want to talk
the
about
cycle.
like normal things like fishing and
and
so,
we'll,
I'll be right there.
and
That's fine.
Eric will be working on aquaculture. So thank y'all very much for turning in this time, and we enjoyed our discussion. So talk to y'all later.
I apologize.
No.